Hi there, my name's Jalal Khan. I'm a dentist based in Sydney. Really excited to talk with Eleanor and her community about all things quantum dentistry. We're going to dive deep into quantum biology, the body electrics, light water magnetism, cranial sacral rhythms, the impact of that on dentistry. Why do we have an epidemic of small mouths? Why do we have an epidemic of chronic disease, non-native electromagnetic frequencies? A little dose of spirituality, and just an all-round great conversation. I hope you all enjoy. Um, so yeah,
I'd love to take a little digression to maybe have you explain some, because now people are like, oh, well, what is he talking about? So
sure.
we'll come back to the quantum biology. There's lots more topics, but can you kind of explain? So I'm a I'll say I'm a survivor of orthodontics in
Yeah,
childhood. I had I can't I don't know the names of the teeth, but the four teeth removed and a
yeah,
retainer.
all three models. Yeah,
Yeah, and now of course I have jaw issues resulting from that. So I think that's the type of thing you're referring to, but maybe
exactly,
just,
exactly,
okay,
exactly.
maybe just
So
share yeah, what are we doing wrong and what would be a better approach?
yeah, so in short, we're breaking the laws of nature, but in long, we'll give you a longer, detailed explanation. What's happening is, and this, what I'm about to say at the end of it, I don't know how long my riff will go for, but it
Okay.
tied in very heavily with quantum biology. So we'll tie, if I forget to tie it in at the end, please
Okay.
remind me. Okay. Which is why it's called quantum dentistry. But basically what happens is that like every child is born with a flat face. And then the face, which is the upper jaw, the cheekbones, etc., the lower jaw, it grows downwards and forwards out of the skull.
Hmm.
And what drives that growth? So going back to first principles, the brain is growing in a child. And as the brain grows, the cranial bones behind and above and the cranial base has to accommodate the growing brain. And as the cranial bones are doing so, they've got this gentle ebb and flow motion to them, which is the osteopaths call the primary respiratory mechanism. The chiropractors call it the CRI, osteopaths call it the PRM. But basically, it's this cranial rhythm. It's like a outwards movement of the cranial bones and back to center, and then we go again outwards movement and back to center. And it's a slow movement and it's a very gentle movement. And if you look at someone, you can't see it happening. But if you hold someone's head and you really ground yourself and you're breathing properly and you're not thinking too heavily about the rhythm, but you're thinking about climbing a mountain or going for a
Mm.
hike, etc., the rhythm will show itself to you. And I remember the first time I felt the cranial rhythm on someone's head, and it was like a life-changing moment for me because it's almost like I was feeling God within that person.
Mm.
Now, that rhythm facilitates the cranial bone's ability to accommodate the growing brain, but that rhythm then drives the forward growth of the face. So it's movement of cranial bones at the back of the head in the cranial base that facilitates the forward growth of the face. We have an epidemic of small jaws, okay, because we have a lot of children that need braces, have had braces, etc., etc. And this has been going on for several years. And if we look at Pottinger's cats study and the effect of like small jaws, etc., on future generations, it's quite profound. Um, it's like, and then it takes four, 5 generations to bring things back to normal. But that's not happening anytime soon for us because of the lifestyles that we're leading. But here's the thing: is that we think that it's because of mouth breathing as one reason why the faces aren't growing properly. And there's part truth to that because when you're mouth breathing, your tongue's down, which means your tongue can't be up against the roof of your mouth. And as a child, the tongue is a key driver of like that facial development. It's like much like the brain presses on the intramembranous bones of the cranium or the cranial vault, the tongue
Mm.
presses on the intramembranous bone of the maxilla and creates that maxilla is the upper jaw and it creates that development. But the other thing is that we have kids not eating chewy enough foods. And yes, that's correct as well. There's an element of truth to that. And another reason is that we have children that are not breastfeeding or breastfeeding for long enough. And as a male, it's very easy for me to say that. And I always say that with a lot of sensitivity. Shout out to all women who are mothers. You are absolute superwomen. I do mean that. But so those are the three key reasons that we think.
So just review those. So
Mouth breathing or
breastfeeding,
nasal,
mouth breathing.
or a lack of breastfeeding, or for long enough mouth breathing due to nasal congestion.
Yeah.
And then the third one is not eating foods that are chewy,
Uh-huh.
that are stimulating the development of the jaws, according to Wolff's law. Now, the mouth breathing congestion, a lot of the time is due to allergies, which a lot of the time is due to a stress cup in that child which is too full, so then a little allergen just gets the cup overflowing. But if they spent more time out in nature, that'd help to get things better. Or it's gluten, dairy allergies, or things like that. So that's one thing. Those are three things. But the fourth reason that no one's thinking about is that we have craniums that are compressed, and that can be a birth trauma. Sometimes it's even an intrauterine trauma inside the womb. Sometimes it's, a child that's 2 years old that falls and bumps the back of their head. All of these things growing up can result in cranial compressions that restrict the movement of the cranial bones, which then restricts the forward growth of the face, which then leads to smaller jaws, which then leads to crowded teeth.
Right.
That's actually the real reason why most children have crowding in their mouths. It's cranial compressions. And like, I've been doing this for long enough where I can kind of look at someone's mouth and tell what is the cranial strain. There's 8 or 9 base cranial strains that someone could have. And you can look at a kid and be like, yeah, that person's got a superior vertical cranial strain or an inferior vertical. And what happens is that so we've got crowded teeth. So the orthodontic industry and also society, because we all want straight teeth, we go and straighten these teeth, and we're not asking a question, why are they crowded in the first place, which I've answered. But a deeper answer to that as well is that the most important thing that we need to do as hunter-gatherers is we need to be able to breathe. And so the body will create postural compensations to facilitate making it easy for us to breathe better, comfortably, without stress. And so those postural compensations look like a shoulder that's down and forward, an opposite hip that's down and forward, some sort of like shoulder blade issue, or ribs, or diaphragm, or knees, or feet, or whatever the case is. And then, of course, we've got drivers coming up from the feet upwards, because we're not walking around barefoot anymore. So our feet aren't developing like they used to 200 years ago. But pulling all of that together, the body's creating twists and turns in our body to make it easier for us to breathe, easier for us to walk, easy for us to keep our eyes parallel to the horizon. So we might bend our head like this because our right eye is lower than our left. And so then we'll do this in order to get them horizontal so that they're parallel to the floor, which then has neck implications, which then has thoracic implications, lumbar, pelvis, sacrum, etc., etc. Okay? The same thing happens in the mouth. The body creates twists and turns in teeth to make it easy for us to breathe. And we as an industry and we as a society expect that the teeth should be straight. So we use braces, Invisalign, to move the teeth out of what I refer to as a misalignment that's functional, and we move it into an alignment which looks
It's not
great,
functional.
but it's dysfunctional.
Wow.
And so the body's like, what the hell did you do that for? And so then the body's like, I'm going to recreate that functional misalignment. And how many people do we know who have had braces or Invisalign and the teeth move back? Myself included. And so that's the body saying, I don't know what you're doing. You're breaking the laws of nature here. I need to do what I need to do so that you can breathe, you idiot. And so we as an orthodontic industry, we're like, if someone spent $9,000 getting their braces done, and if the teeth move back, like, mum and dad aren't happy. And it's like, we got to spend more clinical time correcting this, etc. So how do we fix this issue? Okay, let's bolt the teeth together. So we'll put wires in. And so we put wires behind the front 6 teeth up the top, wires behind the front 6 teeth down the bottom, and we bolt things in place. And so it's like, now the body's like, it's trying to move the teeth back, but it can't. But I know patients where the wires have broken off because the body's been able to override.
Wow.
But it's the body saying, oh, you're not letting me bring those teeth back. I'm going to have to sacrifice something else now to facilitate you being able to breathe properly and function properly. And so that's when the left pelvis goes, or the right TMJ goes, or the neck goes, or someone starts
Wow.
getting a headache or a migraine. And it can sound like fiction, but I have seen this time and time again, day after day for 3 years now, Eleanor, and it is not fiction. It is absolute non-fiction. It is absolute. It happens. I've seen people's sports careers ended early because they had Invisalign in the middle of and I'm talking about elite sportsmen having had Invisalign in the middle of their sports careers, because obviously they're sports stars. They want to have their teeth straightened so
Mhm.
that they look good in the media and everything, and riddled with injury as soon as the Invisalign went in, and lo- ending their careers early. Um, and I've seen that with parents, like who've got kids playing sport, like throwing, catching, kicking was great. As soon as the Invisalign went in, one little boy last week, he lost his right kick. He's playing soccer and he's like, I don't know what's happened to my right kick. Um, and I'm like, well, when did it go? And he's like, 6 months ago. I'm like, when did your Invisalign start? Oh, about 8 months ago. There you go. Like, so when you straighten the teeth and put them into an unnatural position, it just completely dysregulates the
Mm.
what's the word? Proprioception. Okay.
Mhm.
The teeth and the stomatognathing system, which is the fancy word for like the jaws and muscles of the jaws, muscles of mastication, the teeth biting and everything like that. That whole system provides so much proprioception back into the brain. And that's what dentists are not realizing, and that's what medicine is not realizing. That we have a word that in medicine that we refer to about the brain being mapped, and it's called the homunculus, homunculus. And there's a motor homunculus, and there's a sensory homunculus. And the motor homunculus is a map of like what parts of the brain are sending inputs out to different parts of the body where we can control how they move, like how do we move our arm and how do we move our leg. And you can pinpoint which parts of the brain are doing that,
Mhm.
which parts of the brain are moving the jaws and the tongue, for me to be able to speak right now. And then we have a sensory homunculus, which is which parts of the brain are receiving inputs from different parts of the body. Um, and a lot of people don't know that 33 to 37% of sensory information coming into the brain and also motor information leaving the brain come to and from the stomatognathing system, which is the teeth, the bite, the jaw muscles, the tongue, the jaw joints. But this is not 33 to 37% of the body. This is a small part of the body.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
it's
quantum.
highly represented because it's so important.
Exactly. And if you look at Paul Chek's totem pole, and he looks at what are the most important things, he puts sunlight first, and TMJ, jaws, and stuff is like third.
Wow.
Like
And so
that's
Jalal, what's your approach then? So this is kind of what goes wrong. How do you, I guess, if you catch kids before they've had orthodontic work, what do you do? And also if you see people like me who are older,
yeah.
how would you try to help them?
So we'll start with the kids. What we do is we guide the growth. We're not aiming for straight teeth. We're aiming for restoring the growth force that the body uses to grow the jaws. Because when we look at a child's foot when they're 8 years old, we don't think, oh, that's too small. Let's put an expander in it to amplify the growth of that foot, and let's make it a size 10 and a half. Because then you've got a child walking around with flippers, firstly. Secondly, it's obviously a stupid idea, but we're doing that in mouths. So, like, please, can somebody tell me how that makes sense? So what we do is, and we have parents that are in a rush. They're like, we've got to get this done in like 6 months, 9 months. I'm like, what's the rush? It takes 25 years to grow a face. Your child is not supposed to be perfect now. We just need to get the growth force right. And the growth force is making sure that the cranial rhythm is good, making sure the breathing is good, making sure the sleep is good, making sure, because we heal and grow the most when we sleep. But if our sleep is interrupted because we're not breathing well, because we've got allergies to and dairy and gluten intolerances, and mum's giving us cereal every morning, or dad's taking us out for burgers, and then so there's that whole component. But then the mouth breathing can sometimes be just cranial compressions, which are unable to drain the lymph out of the brain, the lymph out of the tonsils, the lymph out of the adenoids, and so then everything gets clogged up, and so we get the cranial rhythm opening, and then things start to drain out rather than take out the adenoids and tonsils. And then we've got and so that this is where it's quantum dentistry, because when a parent comes in and says mouth breathing, and nocturnal enuresis, which is bedwetting in 12-year-olds, for instance, it's like back in the day, I would have said, oh, like expander, straighten the teeth, that'll fix it. But it doesn't fix it. But if you work with the cranial rhythm, you unlock the cranium, you let the body's inherent
natural growth and healing and
do the job. So our kids don't end up with perfectly straight teeth by the end of like 12 months spending time with. Some of them do, but some of them don't. But it's like, it's okay. Let me check them in 6 or 12 months. Just let the body do its thing. And I've got countless photos of how when we take kids off treatment and I check in with them 6 months later, and I'm just like holding my head in my hands, just going, oh my God, like look at that mouth, like look at what the body did. And so like I'm less a dentist and more an osteopath, and like I really want to share a couple of key principles of osteopathy. And we are all inherently osteopaths in the way that we think about. If anyone's listening to this, they're probably an osteopath by nature. But like the body has an inherent capacity to heal, self-regulate, self-maintain. All right. And A.T. Still is the founder of osteopathy. He used to say, one of his famous quotes, one of my favorite quotes, is that it is the job of the physician to find health in the body, not disease.
Wow. I mean, that's the opposite of modern medicine, right? We are not interested in anything about health. We're just interested in the lab test that proves there's a problem.
So you're right. Like mainstream medicine they're doctors of disease, whereas we're going to be doctors of health. We've got to find health within the individual, and health within the individual is optimal cranial rhythms. It's breathing, it's good nutrition, it's exposure to sunlight and grounding and the magnetism of the earth, it's reducing non-native electromagnetic frequencies, it's allowing health to express within an individual. These are like key osteopathic concepts. Another key osteopathic concept is from a gentleman, a DO called James Jealous, or Jim Jealous, who said that the very forces, that the embryological forces that the body uses to grow in a child can be used as healing forces in an adult. And so that's why the work that we do with kids, we can do with that with adults as well. Because like, as you mentioned, like there's a lot of adults that have had 4 teeth removed for braces, because when they're orthodontists or crowded teeth, they're just like, okay, well, there's too many teeth there. Nature's made a mistake, so we'll take out some teeth and straighten. And what happens is everything is wrapped back, which then traps the jaw further back, which compresses the TMJ, which sets people up for chronic TMJ. Very easy to fix. Takes a bit of time, but very easy to fix. But it's not airways dentistry, which is what a lot of holistic dentists are portraying themselves as, airways dentists, and they are airways dentists, where they're focusing on breathing and they're focusing on jaw development. But the forces that they are using to grow the jaw are man-made forces, because they're placing an expander in the mouth and giving mum and dad a key. Can you please turn this key every second day? Nowhere in the history of mankind has a screw been used to grow a jaw, except for in the last 100 years. And so what we do is we use appliances that mimic the forces that the body uses. And the key force that the body uses is, as I said, cranial rhythms, as well as tongue against the roof of the mouth. So we use something called the ALF appliance, or the ALF appliance, which was actually designed by a dentist in the States, Derek Nordstrom, probably about 25, 30 years ago, maybe even more than that. And it's essentially a very thin wire that runs along the inside of the upper teeth, and it clips onto the back teeth, and it mimics the pressure point of the tongue as if the tongue was pressing against the roof of the mouth. And when that goes in, the ALF copies the tongue force as well as decompresses the cranium, and then we just let the body do the rest. And then we see that child regularly every month or so for about 12 months, and we activate the appliance. We use pliers to bend the appliance to make it wider and change the shape of the appliance to help guide the growth. But most dentists that use the ALF appliance will just do it on their own. They'll have a child come into their dental office, they'll bend or activate the ALF, and then they'll say, go and see a cranial osteopath or a chiropractor. But I go that step further, and I'm like, the osteopath is in the same room at the same time when I'm activating the ALF. And so then I place it back into the mouth, and I have an osteopath balance the cranial rhythm to the request that we are making via the mouth. So like, how many practitioners do you know that work in an integrated way where there's multiple practitioners in the same room at the same time?
Yeah. No dentists for sure.
No dentist for sure. So that's the lengths that I go to make sure that we do the best that we can for our children. So with the children, we're using the ALF appliance, or we're using growth guidance appliances. For the adults, we use the ALF appliance. Sometimes we use dental splints, but I make 3 types of dental splints based on body types, that's a whole nother 2-hour conversation. But basically, not every patient gets the same dental splint. It's not a cookie cutter approach. I look at their body type, I look at their height, I look at their physique, their nature, and then we design a dental splint based on that. So it's individualized based on a person's particular body type. And then at the same time, we have cranial osteopaths there to balance the system. The key thing is that in all of that, what we are doing is we are actually optimizing the body's electrics. Okay, because there's a great book by a gentleman called Jerry Tennant, who wrote a book called Healing is Voltage, and he talks about how a healthy cell needs to be operating at minus 25 millivolts in order for it to function well. If someone has chronic disease, they need minus 50 millivolts in order to produce enough voltage to create a new cell. And this idea of like voltage and cellular function, etc., is not new, because like if we read Robert Becker's book, The Body Electric, he talks a lot about how electrical currents are a key for regeneration. He just didn't know where the electric current was coming from. Jack Kruse worked out that the electric current was coming from the sun. So basically, when we are in sunlight, we are producing a DC electric current based on the photoelectric effect, which is another key concept within quantum physics. When our body is exposed to UV light, it excites electrons from their ground state. Imagine you're standing on the ground and you're an electron and you just jump up. You can't jump up for ages. Like, you're eventually going to come back down and land, and that's what happens to the electrons. So
Thanks for joining me on the Dr. Eleanor Stein podcast.
I give off.
I hope you are taking away new strategies and ideas to improve your health and your renewed sense of hope. Join me, Dr. Eleanor Stein, for our next episode. Can't wait.
Used up a
Check
little
out my
bit of that
website
energy
for a
in
wealth
motion.
of free
No
resources.
energy's been lost. It's been converted into kinetic motion, and then the rest of that light's been given off, and then the rest of that light then excites another electron. So then you're standing 2 meters away and you jump up, and then you jump down, and then that whole process continues, and it ends up as infrared, near infrared, and far infrared light within our bodies, at least. So that's actually what happens. But that creates a DC electric current through the electrons within our body. And
with that, so is that biophotons?
no, that's just external light from the sun.
Okay.
Okay, but then yes, we're producing the biophotons, but the original source was the sunlight.
Yeah.
But there's other ways that we produce biophotons as well. So yeah, in our it is one form of biophoton production that we have. And all of that light is traveling through the water inside of our bodies. So it's not just traveling through thin air. Water is the stage upon which light dances. But so that's the whole electrics side of things. But Jerry Tennant, in his book Healing is Voltage, wrote a chapter on cranial osteopathy. And he said, He was referring to a specific cranial maneuver which he observed and learnt from a cranial osteopath in the UK. I think it was in Scotland, which basically corrected the positioning between the sphenoid bone and the occipital bone. And those are the two key bones where there's a fulcrum called the sphenobasal junction, and that fulcrum drives the cranial rhythm. It's like a key joint in the body. And Jerry Tennant said that, quote unquote, there's no modality that he has come across that has as big of an impact on the electrics of the body than that particular maneuver that he was referring to, correcting of the sphenoid and the occiput. So it's like cranial osteopathy is the one modality that has the biggest impact on the body electrics. And this is from a guy that healed himself of almost dying, has healed countless patients with scalar waves and his understanding of energetics and electrics of the body. And he's saying that cranial osteopathy has the biggest effect on the body electrics, which is why it all comes back to quantum dentistry, because it's like we're using dental appliances to amplify cranial osteopathy, which then optimizes the electrics of the body, and the health within the body is able to start expressing.
Wow, that's all new to me. I've never really understood osteopathy, so I really appreciate that explanation. So, I've been to an osteopath, but never had them work on my head. So they're doing, I'm guessing, very gentle maneuvers
Very
to
gentle.
kind of free up or unblock those natural rhythms. Would that be right?
Yeah. So like you may have tension on, one side of your head at the back and another side of your head towards the side or the front, etc. And they're just gradually working their way through your cranium and just restoring flow back.
Wow.
But the thing is that the cranium is also connected to the sacrum via the spinal cord, and there's the spinal cord wrapped in the dura mater, and the dura mater anchors into the sacrum, wraps around the spinal cord, and comes into the foramen magnum, which is a hole in the base of our skull, brainstem, brain, and then the dura mater fans out and attaches into different parts of the cranium, which is why tailbone injuries and cranial bone injuries can go hand in hand, because it twists and causes turns and kinks and compensations in the dura mater, which then twists on the entire central nervous system. Add to that, inside the cranium, a large majority of the dura mater is innervated by the trigeminal nerve, teeth.
Oh, okay.
So when the bite is off,
Oh,
it can overactivate the trigeminal nerve, which creates dural tension, which can really lock up the central nervous system and affect the whole body electrics. This is what the dentists don't understand, is that there is no type of modality in medicine that has as big an impact negatively on the neurology of the body than dentistry. The teeth are direct extensions of the brain because of the trigeminal nerve, which is the largest cranial nerve in the body. And dentists are placing fillings and crowns and redoing bites and doing oral rehabilitations and, all on fours and all of that. And they're paying no attention to the cranial rhythm. They're paying no attention to the dura mater and the dural tension. I don't practice restorative dentistry anymore because I focus on this postural functional stuff. But when I did, whenever I would do an oral rehabilitation case, I would have an osteopath palpating the cranium whilst I was deciding what the final bite would be for that patient.
wow.
This is before inserting the final. This is like the second last appointment. We're choosing the bite. How high do we restore someone's bite to? I've got a cranial osteopath checking. Once he gives me the go ahead, we capture that bite, send that off to the lab, make it to exactly the bite that I provided, nothing higher, nothing shorter. And every time it'd go in, it would just be perfect. Prior to doing that, though, whenever a rehab would go in, like a little chip of a crown might happen or this or that, because I was just thinking like a dentist and not thinking like a whole body practitioner.
That's fascinating. So you may not know this. I work in a community, we call it complex chronic diseases. So it's chronic fatigue, chronic pain, fibromyalgia, long COVID, things like that. And within this community, a lot of people have something called craniocervical instability or tethered cord at the
Yeah.
other end. I'm just wondering, it might be outside your kind of knowledge, but do you have, and so at the worst case scenario, people are going for surgery to, um, I don't know the right word, like to stabilize the craniocervical junction or to release
Yeah,
the
they're going
tethered
for
cord.
fusions. They're going for fusions.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering if you have I'm just listening to everything you just said. I'm like, ooh,
The
maybe
mouth is
that's
being
not a good idea.
It's not a good idea. The mouth is being ignored. No one's looking inside the mouth. And the mouth,
Right.
you can use the mouth as a healing instrument. The mouth isn't just something that you repair. The mouth can actually be used as a healing instrument because when you engage the mouth, it creates space and room for the body to heal and regulate and self-maintain. The types of patients that you're describing in your community is the types of patients that I regularly treat. And I have a few integrative doctors on the eastern seaboard in Australia that will refer some of their most complex patients to me and say, Jalal, please help. Because we're not getting anywhere, or we've got as far as we can go, and over to you. And it's like I feel like in those particular instances, I'm less a dentist and more a physician because a lot of the time, like all the quantum stuff is ignored. Or the doctor has told them to do it, but they're not doing it, so I'll just reinforce it. But then we get the craniosacral stuff moving nicely. We free things up, and we watch that. I mean, I've had a child who had like chronic migraines. Used to read every day, used to read in the car, and she missed a whole year of school. And her mother somehow discovered me, and they lived 8 hours away, and so they came to see me. I said, "Yeah, this is just like this is a slam dunk case. We can definitely do this." And 12 months later, like she said to me, "Thanks for giving me my daughter back." And like this is chronic fatigue. This is ME. This is like the whole shebang. And her daughter's like, she's glowing. She's grown. She's eating properly again. She's going out in sunlight. So her soul's back online. And I mean, coming
Yeah.
back to the whole spiritual thing as well is
Yeah.
like osteopaths believe that the seat of the soul is within the cerebrospinal fluid.
Hmm.
And the optimizing a cranial rhythm is allowing optimal flow of the cerebrospinal fluid, hence creating room and space for the soul to express. So what
Yeah.
I do is
Yeah.
deeply spiritual. There is a spiritual fulcrum that underpins everything that I do.
That's fascinating. So, what are some of the, I heard you talk in another podcast that you're introducing kind of the lifestyle quantum behaviors to your patients, and you actually won't work with people who aren't open to, for
Yeah.
example, going out in sunlight. So, I'm wondering maybe what are some of the things that you just feel are so important that people need to implement?
So one of the key things is we need to think about our relationship with sunlight. Um, it's almost like a separate relationship to your husband or your wife or your partner. Like you have like for me, it's my second wife. Like I will find reasons to go outside. I will do things that I can do inside. I will do them outside. You know, um, I just am trying to be outside as much as I can for whatever reason possible.
Mhm.
And for me, I don't necessarily now need to think about time of day, but for someone that's starting to think about their relationship to light now, that morning part of the day is critical. So if getting up for sunrise is difficult, then trying to get up as close to sunrise as possible is just like it's better than nothing. You know what I mean? It's still really good. And then you start to reset your circadian clock. And your circadian clock is a little clock that's behind your eyes that is driven by blue light coming out of the sun. It's programmed by blue light coming out of the sun. And so When we are exposing ourselves to sunlight, we are correcting the aberrant information that the circadian clock is running off and bringing it back to a reset. And then,
And sorry, just to cut in, it's aberrant because, so I've got lights all around me here,
yeah,
because we're exposing ourselves to all these non-native lights.
correct. So, in a nutshell, the the amount of light we're exposing ourselves to that's artificial is way more than it ever has been. But the key thing is that about 80% of the light of a light globe, particularly LEDs and stuff, about 80% of it is blue light. And the intensity of that blue light is the same as the amount of blue light in the sun at solar noon, like lunchtime.
Wow.
So you got to think of like a bell curve. The amount of blue light in the sun is very low at the start of the day, and then it kind of works its way up and it increases in blue light intensity in the morning and peaks at solar noon and then comes back down slowly to zero as kind of like a bell curve. But we wake up in the morning and the first thing we do is switch on the lights. And so
Yeah.
we're going to peak intensity of blue light at solar noon from 7 a.m. through to 10 p.m.
Right.
in our ceiling lights, in our office lights, in our computers, in our phones. So we're telling our brain all day long that it is solar noon, it is lunchtime, which is why it can be hard to fall asleep at night because your brain thinks it's lunchtime. But what that blue light does is it scrambles your body's sense of time because the blue light receptors that are in your circadian clock behind your eye are also in your skin. So your entire body is a solar panel, but your entire body is also a blue light receiver, and the peripheral clocks within your body, because every organ has a clock, every cell has a clock, and all of those clocks further downstream from the master clock, the circadian clock, all of those clocks are being dysregulated as well. And so then what happens is your body loses its sense of time. And within our body, we have an economy that's transacting electrons and protons and hormones and this and this is constant transaction. The currency is electrons and protons. Okay. In our greater 3D economy, we've got exchange of goods and services, and the currency is US dollars or Canadian dollars or Aussie dollars, etc. But what would happen if everybody's clock was telling a different time? It's like if a patient's got to come and see you, Eleanor, at 2 p.m., but their clock's running 3 hours behind, and the next patient's clock is running 2 hours ahead of yours, is complete and utter chaos.
Right.
That's inflammation, and that's what's happening inside of our bodies. So the liver's like, what the hell? The kidneys are like, what's going on, mate? And it's the gallbladder's like, I'm next to the liver, but we ain't telling the same time. And then we're eating food, which is creating holding a photonic signal from another country. And then we're exposing ourselves to all this blue light, the non-native electromagnetic frequencies, and you can start to understand the chaos. It is an absolute wonder that we are able to live as long as we can live with all of this light abuse. And it just pays homage to the wonder that is creation and our human body, and the ability for our body to store energy from such small amounts of sunlight that we do get. Because the thermodynamics is the energy flowing through our body, but the reason that we are able to delay death, create order from the chaos, is because we are able to store huge amounts of energy within the water inside of our bodies. The water is the capacitor that stores the energy. There's one thing to have energy flowing through us, food comes in, food comes out, but along the way we store huge amounts of energy, even from small amounts of sunlight exposure. But that constant abuse may mean that, yeah, we can live to 80 years now and we can break the laws of nature. We can take pharmaceuticals and this and that. But then the last 20, 30 years of our life is just spent with organ failures and things like that. And it's not a way to live. So it's about resetting the timing in your body. And so the way that you do that is you start with the circadian master clock, which is behind your eyes, and you get up for sunrise and you expose yourself to that light and you minimize your exposure to artificial light. There's glasses that you can get which are red and orange and yellow for you to wear at different times of the day if you're on screens like this.
Mhm.
This is an example of a glasses, and you can change screen settings on your computer. There's softwares out there for that now. Flux, Iris come to mind. It's about reducing your exposure to Wi-Fi. It's about stop wearing Bluetooth headphones. It's about not microwaving your food anymore. Do those bare basics, and then go outside as much as you can. Work outside if you can. Eat food outside if you can. If you can work on your laptop outside, do that. If the sun gets hot and it heats up your laptop, put your laptop in a box. Cut a box out, cut off the lids, and put your laptop inside a box and work under the box there. That's what I do.
Huh.
It's turning off the Wi-Fi and having a wire that connects directly into your computer. Not an Ethernet wire unless it's shielded, but a fiber optic wire. Like it's an endless drink clean water, we don't want to drink tap water. We don't want to drink overly filtered water as well. We want to drink water that's got some sort of minerals in it, because if the water is void in minerals, then it's going to draw trace minerals out of you. And so remineralize your water. There's specific mineralization things that you can get. You can go simple with Celtic salt. Structure your water. Restore the Earth's magnetic and electric imprints that it places within water. Restore that back to your body so that you're drinking magnetized, energized, and activated water.
Can you say a little bit more about water? So we've talked a bit about light, and I'd love to cover water and magnetism.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about the mitochondria because it'll tie all
Okay,
three.
sounds good.
So the mitochondria is like the key power plant, which is what most people think it is, inside of our cell. Every single one of our cells has multiple mitochondria. And so they're the energy producers, they're the batteries, they're getting things going. The key thing about the mitochondria is that they're in every cell except for the red blood cell. What they do is the stage upon which metabolism happens, all the food that we eat, whether that's sugars, fats, proteins, it all eventually gets broken down and is funneling into the mitochondria in a form of electrons. So you got to think of like the mitochondria is like there's this membrane which has 5 stations which are called cytochromes, and the electrons from sugars and proteins funnel into the first station. Electrons from fat funnel into the second station. And with this line of stations, which are called cytochromes, we have underneath the mitochondrial matrix, which is like this area that's just enveloped, and it's full of protons. And as the electrons come across from either cytochrome 1 or 2, station 1 or 2, and they move across to 3, they do a thing called quantum tunneling, which is a quantum physics principle, and they end up at number 4, and they stop at number 4. As that's happening, protons are being moved from below that line to above that line. And so we start to create a proton gradient, and that proton gradient is critical for down the line. When the electrons come to number 4, they number 4 is called cytochrome C oxidase. It has oxygen next to it, and the electrons attach to oxygen and make oxygen a little bit negative. So oxygen sitting there as like an O2 minus, but it needs a bit of a positive charge in order for it to kind of close things off. And but meanwhile, as the hydrogens are accumulating above, then they come down through number 5, work their way across to the O2 minus, and attach to the O2 minus, 2 hydrogens do, to produce H2O. That is how we make water. We make water as a byproduct of metabolism. So essentially, what happens is that photosynthesis is CO2 plus water under sunlight becomes glucose and oxygen. We do the reverse. We breathe in oxygen and we eat glucose, and under sunlight, we produce water and CO2, and we breathe out the CO2. So that's the fundamentals of mitochondria. The key thing is that each station is negatively affected by artificial blue light. The first station is a UV light receiver. The second station is a green light receiver. The fourth and fifth stations are red and infrared light receivers. And all of those are within sunlight. Sunlight's full spectrum, it's not just one color. So the sunlight's able to activate and amplify all 5 of those stations. But we are exposing ourselves to light which is 80% blue light, negatively affecting all the first 4. And so then what happens is that that affects our ability to produce water. That dehydrates our tissues.
Mm.
And every protein in our body has to be hydrated by this water in order for it to function. And when we have dehydrated proteins, they don't work as well, and the whole system just doesn't work. So that's mitochondria. Now, how does this tie in with light, water, and magnetism? So with light's activating a flow of electrons across. Now, Jim Clark Maxwell was a Scottish physicist that was one of the key kind of pillars of early electromagnetics, and he said that when you have a flow of electrons, it creates a magnetic force, a magnetic field. So we have a flow of electrons inside the mitochondria that produce a magnetic field so the mitochondria are like little magnets. So that's where the light water magnetism happens. Now, why do red blood cells not have mitochondria inside of them? Because it means then that they have less of a magnetic field. That's how they get attracted to the periphery, through magnetism.
I'm not sure I followed that.
I'll say it again.
Okay.
The cells in our body have got heaps and heaps of mitochondria, okay?
Which are little magnets.
Which are little magnets, so there's this magnetic field, but the red
Yeah.
blood cells don't have mitochondria, so they have a much lower magnetic field. So that's how the red blood cells magnetically get attracted, because they've got less magnetism and they're moving towards a field with more magnetism. That's how
Okay.
they get attracted to the periphery to then offload their nutrients.
One of the things you said about creating water, and is it correct to say the water that the mitochondria are producing is deuterium free?
Correct, because everything's been through the TCA cycle before to
Right.
filter out the deuterium in that mitochondrial matrix, and then it kind of then the electrons, and so the mitochondrial matrix is full of these like hydrogens and less deuterium. So deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen, which means it is a hydrogen, but inside the nucleus, it's not just a proton. It has a proton and a nucleus. So the nucleus doesn't change the charge. It has a proton and a neutron. The neutron doesn't change the charge, but it doubles the weight of the nucleus. So we have what's called a heavy hydrogen. So then when that loses an electron, it becomes deuterium. When a hydrogen loses an electron, it becomes a protium. And so the difference between deuterium and protium is that deuterium has that extra neutron in the nucleus, which if our mitochondria is what I would call deuterated, meaning full of deuterium, because we're eating processed foods and we're eating junk, systems overloaded with deuterium, ultimately the deuterium won't be able to like diffuse out of the cell fast enough, and so then it gets stuck in that entire electron transport chain that I just described, and so the deuterium will move above the line of cytochromes, and it will come down through number 5 and join to the negatively charged oxygen to form D2O, which is deuterium water. If it could though, but it can't, because the deuterium is too heavy, and so it can't fit through number 5. It's too heavy to fit through, which is an issue, because then the mitochondria shuts down. It's literally like you're throwing a spanner in a gear, and that gear is rotating at 9,600 RPM. And so when that's spinning so fast, you throw a spanner and the whole thing breaks down. What you need to repair it is melatonin. because melatonin, which is produced inside the mitochondria, 95% of our melatonin is not produced in the pineal gland, it's produced inside our mitochondria. But melatonin is negatively affected by artificial blue light. So it's like the very thing that you need to repair the mitochondria is being shut down by the artificial blue light that we're living in our lives. And this is like the deep science, and it's really
Yeah.
hard to explain. Like you can see how it's all interlinked and interwoven.
Yeah.
Like
It's so elegant.
it's so elegant, and it's not linear. It's like this is connected to this, which is connected to this. It's this beautiful dance that's happening, and this affects this and affects this. And it's like, online I hear people talking about, oh, you got to take taurine, or you got to take this, or you got to take vitamin B12, you got to take vitamin D, this and that. And it's like, it doesn't work like that, because no one can possibly know all of the interactions between, copper and magnesium and iron and all the vitamins and all the hormones and all of it. Like, you can't possibly wrap your head around it all for each individual specific case that comes in through your door. So you got to be like, our job is to provide the ingredients through good food and let sunlight be the chef.
I love it.
It's like, it really is that simple. Like, there's no way that you or I can be 100% definitive in knowing that you need to take this or you need to take that without knowing whether or not then we're no different to a pharmacist or a mainstream medical doctor, because coming back to osteopathic philosophy, the body has an ability to heal and self-regulate, self-maintain. It has infinite wisdom. You are dealing with a quantum thermodynamic system that is infinitely more wise than you are.
Right.
You plus me plus Dr. Jack Cruz plus, everyone combined is still like a very small amount of knowledge compared to the wisdom of the body. So 0.1 divided by infinity is 0 at the end of the day. You and I know nothing. The only thing we do know, which is critical, is that we have an immense and deep respect for the wisdom of the body, and we work with it, and we use forces that the body uses, such as sunlight, such as craniofacial dental appliances that mimic the body's forces, and you just let the body's wisdom do the rest.
I love it. Can I ask you something? So you briefly mentioned hydration and metabolic water, or the water that's created as we metabolize food.
Yes.
One of the big debates that's puzzled me over the years is how much water should a person drink? And in my field, everyone thinks they should be drinking 8 glasses of water a day. And then I talk to Dr. Borash, and he says, oh no, everyone's drinking way too much. I remember I spent quite a bit of time in Australia, and I remember hearing that the indigenous people there consider white people to be water addicted. They just shake their heads like we're always thirsty and always drinking. And that just put the seed of an idea in my head that maybe drinking more isn't necessarily better.
I agree. I think that drinking more isn't necessarily better because, number one, the water we're drinking isn't good. And even if it's clean, it doesn't have energy and information in it. It's dead water.
Mm.
The second thing is that I personally, I drink to thirst. When I'm thirsty, I drink.
Okay.
I'm not
Okay.
thirsty, I don't drink. And the more time I spend outside in nature, my mitochondria are purring nicely like a Ferrari engine, and they're producing more water. So I feel I don't need as much water. If I'm in the sun and it's really hot and I'm sweating, obviously I'm getting rid of water, the toxins through my skin, etc., and I'll feel thirsty and then I'll drink. So I drink to thirst. I keep it simple. How can, once again, back to principles, how can one possibly definitively say that 8 glasses of water for every single human being on the planet is correct, given that we're all living different lifestyles in different, emotional situations, in different spiritual situations, in different metabolic situations, in different non-native electromagnetic situations? How can
Right.
we stand it for everybody? It just doesn't work like that. So trust the body, trust your intuition. I always say to my patients, lean into your intuition. How many times have we ignored what we felt or thought and lived to be like, "Ah, I wish I had just listened to myself. I knew that that was wrong." you know?
Yeah.
It's the body's wisdom saying, "Listen, listen, listen." So I'm in agreement with you. The big thing about water is that, like, is structuring the water. I think that's really important. And the best ways to structure the water is like leave it out in sunlight, let the light structure
Oh.
it.
So
Um,
light will structure water even
yeah,
if it's in an inert container.
yeah, but you got to take the lid off.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
or you can put water in like a copper tin or a copper jug and place that on the ground and like leave magnetism structure it. But my preference is well, like easier, with day-to-day busy life, work, young kids, etc. Is that um there's a system called MEA water, which is actually from a scientist down in Australia. Um, and the info for that will be on my website, sydneyfunctionaldentistry.com.au. There's a shop section there where I have a listing about MEA water, etc. Or it's going up in a few days. I recently attended a workshop with this gentleman, Rob Goulet, and he uses magnets to structure the water, and it's unbelievable. Like, you can taste the difference between
Wow.
structured water and structured water. It feels smoother. And I feel different when I have it.
Interesting. Can you explain a little bit what is structured water?
Structured water is water that has imprinted within it the Earth's frequencies, as if you were to find that water within nature, within a stream or a river,
Mhm.
because it's the flow of the water and it taking on the Earth's energies and the Earth's magnetism and light, etc., that gives this water this structure. And it's not like a necessarily a physical structure, but it's like this energetic imprint within the water, such that if you were to scoop up a bit of water from a stream and drink it, like, there's no better water than that. Um, there is also structured water within our body, and it's a slightly different type of structured water, but essentially the water that our mitochondria produces can be structured by infrared light, and it's what we call charge separation. It separates the water into two phases, the bulk water liquid phase, and which forms the lumen of like a lot of the vessels throughout our body, and then the vessels are lined by this exclusion zone or structured water, which is like a liquid crystal, which means it's like a little bit like a jelly. It's got all these horizontal layers of water attached to each other, um, and that it creates an exclusion zone where it excludes toxins and anything that's bigger than a hydrogen, but allows hydrogen to flow through. And so it's a great way to detox, is to build the structured water within your body, and that happens
Mm.
when you're out in the sunlight. And the thing is that with structured water, the dance is beautiful, because like when you're out in the morning light, the infrared light from the sun, 43% of it is infrared and red light. It structures your water and creates this exclusion zone. But
And
then,
so it can like penetrate our body
yes,
to structure the water in our blood and our cells all over the body.
correct, correct.
Okay.
But then the water's actually changed its phase. It's gone from liquid phase to like this plasma, this liquid crystal phase, this
Yeah.
fourth phase of water. So its size, shape, and behavior has changed, which in a good way, which means then that its peak absorption for light is different to what it was when it was previously bulk water. And so its peak absorption for light for activation is UV light. And so then at 10 o'clock at UVA rise on cue, Mother Nature produces UV light. And the UV light further structures that structured water into coherent water, which like amplifies the electrons within that structured water a millionfold. More electrons, that's good, isn't it? That's more electrons for DC electric current. That's more electrons to flow through your mitochondria, which is why you don't need to eat as much if you're spending more time out in nature. Because there's three sources of electrons for our mitochondria: food, the earth through grounding, and the photoelectric effect of the sun. But if we're not getting enough excited electrons from the photoelectric effect of the sun, and we're not getting enough grounding, we've got to eat more food.
Got it. And you just segued perfectly into maybe the last area I was going to ask you about, which is earthing.
Yes.
and kind of what you recommend to people around that.
Um, Earthing is it's pretty simple. It's like go to the beach, swim in the ocean, be in nature. You breathe in the negative ions of a forest. Um, it really is that simple. There's lots of grounding mats and earthing mats out there, but it's not all as it seems, because they are carrying in dirty electricity from the grid.
Okay.
And yes, they may be earthed, but if they're carrying in dirty electricity from the grid, and our grids are full of dirty electricity, then you're just loading your body with dirty electricity. It's another example of overcomplicating things, and trying to hack our way through the modern lifestyle without just returning back to basics.
Yeah, I think if I had to summarize what I've learned from you today, it's like we have this hubris or ego that
Yep.
we're smarter and that we can find a hack, a quicker way, an easier way we can overcome, work around. And I think what I'm hearing you say is back to nature.
Yeah, and surrender to God, surrender to that divine power that knows way more than you, that created all of this, which is
Yeah.
where it winds back down to a spiritual game. Is that, like, you have to surrender, you have to trust. These are difficult times that we live in, but if we trust and we surrender, God always delivers.
That's a great ending. You did mention your website, but are there any other links or resources that you want to share with people if they want to learn more?
Um, So my website, sydneyfunctionaldentistry.com.au, it has a media page of like some of the other podcasts that I've done.
Okay.
This has been one of my favorites, by the way, because I've really
Thank
got to
you.
go deep. So thank you for hosting me.
You're
Um,
welcome.
there's a few recommended products, a few of those biohacks which I mentioned for those that are busy, because we do have to be realistic as well.
Yeah.
We respect nature and its infinite wisdom and healing capacities, but we're also busy. So I get it. And if a single mother of two can't get out into the forest alone because she's looking after two little ones, I'm not going to say no, I can't help you. I'm going to do my best to recommend something that can help supplement her health. Um, so there's that. I am starting to roll out a few courses over the next 1 to 2 years. There's a lot that's been written, and going to start teaching a bit more. Some of it will be online, some of it will be in person, but things like the body typing system, which was a game changer for me, and a few other things. So yeah, appreciate yeah. The other thing would be the quantumkid.com.au, which is my other website regarding the craniofacial development of the children and guiding that.
Great. Thank you so much. I think we're gonna split this into two parts because there was
Sure.
so much in it. I don't want people to just be overwhelmed and turn it off. So I think we'll split it into two episodes. I really, really appreciate your deep knowledge. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Doc. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining me on the Dr. Eleanor Stein podcast. I hope you are taking away new strategies and ideas to improve your health and a renewed sense of hope. Join me, Dr. Eleanor Stein, for our next episode. Can't wait? Check out my website for a wealth of free resources.